so happy to see everyone here. My name is my name is Lexa Lubanga, and I am the creator and host for this event, Kenyan Readathon, which is a month-long reading marathon, where we get to read only Kenyan authored books for the whole month of September. So this year is the third edition. And last year we had a physical event at the National Theatre on the 23rd of September, something of the same setup like today, and it was beautiful. So this year I'm also happy to host you here to come and talk about Kenyan works and share your fears, your concerns, your excitements, what you're reading, and what you'd love to recommend to someone. So we're going to have a forum on the theme of this year's event, which is literary methods and the future of Kenyan writing. As we await two more speakers, I have special speeches from authors who could not make it today. So I'll read them first. And they are both from Mwangis. So if you know any Kenyan author by the name Mwangi, you could guess. So I'll start with one by an author called Robert Mwangi. He could not make it, he's out of the country, and this is what he wrote for us today. Hi everyone, my name is Robert Mwangi, and I'm the author of the book Whisper in the Jungle, published by Story Moja Publishers in Kenya. The debate about writing and publishing in Kenya is one that has been discussed since the first English novel, Weep Not Child, by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, was published in 1962. We all know for a fact that since then, that is not a question of whether Kenyans like to read, because the answer to that is yes. I read countless of Hardy Boys, the famous 5 novels growing up, but I did not remember ever buying a book. Now, when it comes to publishing, statistics tells us that 95% of publishing company sales in Kenya come from textbook sales. Is that so? These statistics are wrongly interpreted to claim that Kenyans only read school-related material, which I firmly disagree. Trying to get published in Kenya is very hard because a lot of publishing companies focus on school-related material, and yet you have so many writers in Kenya who are looking for a door or a window into the publishing world. What is the way forward for all these young writers? When I submitted my book, Whisper in the Jungle, to Story Moja Publishers, I was surprised when it was accepted for publication. Later on, when the celebration died down, I asked the publishing company why they accepted to publish my book, and they told me that they read the first page of the manuscript and they loved it. How do you get published in Kenya? You list down all the publishing companies in Kenya and then go through their website in search of their submission guidelines. And then came COVID, and the publishing companies were not able to visit schools and sell their books. Many publishing companies in Kenya were forced to lay off their employees, and all book publications were stopped. My question again is this: what will happen to all the young writers? My advice to all the young writers out there is this: don't stop writing. Write because it makes you happy, not because of the money you'll make. Second, the story that you write has to come from a deep place inside you. You must bleed it out. You must be emotional when you talk about it. It helps if the story is something you have personally experienced. Lastly, look beyond Kenya for publication. Thank God for the internet and the rise of smartphones in Kenya. In 1962, Ngugi wa Thiong'o submitted his manuscript, Weep Not Child, to a publishing company outside of the country. And because of the depth of the story, he became the first Kenyan to get published in English. Instead of waiting for our publishing companies in Kenya to recover from COVID depression, write your manuscript, edit, edit, and then submit far and beyond. The future of Kenyan writing is in your hands. Thank you. This is great. Thank you. That is from Robert Mwangi, the author of Whisper in the Jungle. His books are available out there, published by Story Moja. So the next speech, I'd really love everyone to be inside here for this. I don't know if you can hear me. Those of you who are out there, please join us. Can we give them a minute to join us? This is what Major Mwangi wrote. I started writing long before I heard of literary methods. My one and only method then was to sit down with a pen and paper and write my story. That was and still is my entire method. I have since learned of literary methods and even understood some of them. I can't say I use any of them. I know only one method when it comes to the serious work of writing a book. My method may be considered a bush method today, but back then it was the only method, and it still works for me. Paper and pen and hours of toil. You must find a method that works best for you, but I challenge you to find that differs substantially from mine. In a literary gathering such as this, you can learn a lot about literary methods and creative writing in general from people who have understood and made it their mission to pass on the knowledge. Those who come for that here will probably leave satisfied. But those who come here hoping for a sure method to get their writing started may be very well disappointed. Whether you use pen and paper or a word processor, you still must sit down for hours and hours to write your book, the Bush method. It's not going to be easy. A writer is a worker. His books may sometimes be referred to as his creative works, his literary works, or literary collection. Writing is hard work, but there is no more gratifying feeling than having finished a manuscript, to hold it in your hands and say, there, I have done it. And that is before you see it in a bookshop inside a beautiful cover with your name on it. Many years ago, a group of renowned academics, fathers of East African creative writing, lamented East Africa's literary barrenness. Kenya is no longer a literary desert. So many writers are stepping out to the challenge of writing their story, creative or otherwise, and having it printed by themselves or by someone else. Though only a handful of those who start get to finish their literary journeys, we can soon accept an output of literary works such was unthinkable when the pioneers of East African writing referred to us as a literary desert. In conclusion, to those who came here to learn a method or perhaps just to be inspired to start their literary journey, the future of writing in Kenya is in your hands. Don't waste any moment. Sit down and start writing. Don't waste time looking for a method or waiting for the right time. The Bush method has been tried and tested time and again and found to work. Whatever you think of it, and there is never going to be a perfectly right moment to get started. Take the time you have now and use it well. Get your story written. An editor once said to me, if your goal is to be a writer, not even God can help you. But if your intention is to write, no one can stop you. Go for it. And have a great readathon today, Major. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you've all gotten the major from the two Mwangis, Robert Mwangi and Major Mwangi himself.
I'm sorry so much I'm late. I think Mwende and others are not forgiving me. My name is Joke. I was supposed to come and moderate this session, really, not speak so much. And I told Mwende when I was coming here that today is a day that is packed by a lot of things for me, so I came late, but I'm happy for that. I run Comrades Book House. I think this is where we link up with Mwende, but also with Alexa. It's purely a space for promoting African fiction. But also we have got many people here who support in various ways this endeavor for African and Kenyan writing in particular. As Lex has said, this is not a closed forum from this panel, which will have some moments of reflection from ourselves, a comment, but also either a contribution or a question. And without much ado, I will introduce themselves, but let me introduce the one that I know much more. Mwende Chalo is a literary enthusiast. And I think if there's one lady and one writer who completely baffles us with the kind of books she reads by ear, all kinds of books, it is Mwende. So you will introduce yourself, Mwende, properly than they have done, but also you'll give us your presentation regarding the topic. So karibu sana.
So good afternoon. As Njuki has introduced me, I'm Mwende Chalo. I think I'll say an African reader and also an African reviewer. I review almost all books I read, both on my Facebook page and on my blog. That is mwendechalobookraeviews.wordpress.com. Currently editing at Ukwa Critic magazine and also an independent editor for books. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that you also graced the occasion. So I think I'll give Mutende a chance to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like Mwende said, I'm happy to be here as well and to engage with all of you in the third readathon. I'm a predominantly creative fiction writer focusing on African culture and history.
So I think just to begin us off, I'll talk about something that both Mwangis have talked about, which was publishing. I think that's the major problem I think Kenyans encounter, or Kenyan authors encounter. And I think they've said everything, that publishing houses had a problem with, or rather, I won't say a problem, but they were not accepting creative work from Kenyans. That was a major challenge that Kenyans faced. And one of the ways that Kenyans have dealt with it or sorted it out has been self-publishing. I think if you go outside there, you'll find a lot of books that Kenyans have self-published. So I think that concerning the future of Kenyan writing, I think that is one of the God-sent ideas that Kenyan authors had and have actualized it. So in terms of moving forward, I think that's something we can build upon, that Kenyans can actually find solutions on their own and move ahead with them. But slightly tied to self-publishing has to be Facebook, social media, Twitter, Instagram, technology. That has enabled writers that, for example, Mesha Kyobi can publish a book. We both know in advance that in 2 months' time, this author is going to release a book. We're all waiting for it, we read it, we review it on social media, someone else buys it. So I think that has been one of the revolutionary other ideas that, or other platforms that have helped Kenyan authors, that is technology. The other thing would be that Kenyans are beginning to question their education system. I think the education system in Kenya had people into one way of thinking, so you're all beaten out of your independent or creative way of thinking into this one specific pathway. But with time, Kenyans are beginning to question that. Because I think to write your own story, you need to believe in yourself. You need to have your own identity to believe that I have a story and it's worth telling. So I think we are slowly beginning to regain our souls back, which is important for the kind of stories we tell. Or even for telling the stories in the first place, for saying that I'm going to sit down and tell the story about this woman in Mombasa or something like that. So I think that's one of the other ways that we're trying to grow and trying to get into ourselves. And that's something that we can borrow also from the other countries that are literally giants, like Nigeria. I think they do that very well. Not to compare ourselves to them, but in terms of having a soul, in terms of having your own soul, and writing, let's say, about your village without comparing it to Nairobi city, being very comfortable in whatever you're talking about. So I think that's one of the things that we can either talk about or deal with, or we're trying to get around. In terms of challenges, I would say that from the books I've read personally, the self-published ones, the publishing houses had a process that I think we should not do away with. That is, you have your story, you take it to someone, they tell you, this story is good, but change this part, change this part. So there are some books I read and you think you should have given your friend, and a very frank friend, to tell you, you know, chapter 3, you can start it differently. So I think that's one of the processes we can't do away with, the ones that the publishing houses were taking the books through, that you can still find a community or people around you to take your book through. It doesn't have to. You're doing your writing and then tomorrow you've printed your book. So I think we still need to look at the process, and we still need to maintain the integrity of the process, just maybe in an easier way or in a way that works for Kenyan authors. So I think I'll stop there for now, and we'll continue as time goes.
So with the focus of the discussion being literary methods and the future of Kenyan writing, I do believe that the future is open, but one thing I always try to live by when I write is, and I advise other authors this, is you have to think of your book as a product for the audience. If your book is not solving a problem, then how is it going to connect to the audience? So for example, there's a book out there called The Leaves of May, where it talks about the feminist character in a man's world without necessarily being antagonistic, and then you explore the reasoning behind feminism. And the only other book that I can recall that did that effectively without being antagonistic was the book by Margaret Ogola, The River and the Source. So the author Musoni Maina has done a very good job of capturing the female psyche and female perspective without having to be antagonistic against the male gender. And that's one thing that I always use when I try to develop books, and then also focus on the concept and character. When Meja said use the Bush method, I find it's better just to write the complete story and then go back and edit it and apply all the writing techniques of plot, summary, character development, all that kind of thing. So you don't cut your characters or your concept off at the knees before they've had a chance to fully grow.
I'm being advised we can all use our mics so that we'll come back to these colleagues that I think they talk so much about. I think when they really reflect so much about self-publishing, and saying that even if there's a new frontiers of exploration for our writings, we should be able to have quality, because once you read a book and you find mistakes there, then you lose completely the entire interest in the book. Even the covers, even you package upon the book, becomes very, very keen. But also, she talks about the education system is being questioned by some writers from a long time ago. But also, she talks about writing, of writings and arting having a soul, that you've got your own voice and you're not copying that voice. But also, she talks about the challenges which goes through the writing process. But of course, Mutembei talks about how writers have been able to patch through the times. They must talk about reflecting the reality that is there. And before I give the audience to ask questions, there is one writer, I think it's who says that the writer must either be a teacher, or a magician, or a prophet. Now, if all of them, so if you fall into that, or even an activist maybe, but a teacher, a magician, and a prophet. For example, the works of Gabriel Marquis, you find a lot of magic. You find Chinua Achebe and Gogo were early teachers. You find others who are prophesying the future. Would that be the Kenyan writing, the Kenyan future that you're talking about? So I will roll the mic, and then we will come back to you, and then you'll be able to respond and maybe much more contributions.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jerusha Kananu Marete. An author of 2 poetry anthologies titled Marry Me a Co-Wife and Other Poems and Echoes of Military Souls. I'm glad to hear Mwende talking, and especially in part of reviewers, I think you're doing a great job. Thank you. Talking about the future of African writing, I have 2 things to talk about. One is Kenyan writers are doing a lot, but I think there's been shortage of space. Apart from writing, they've gone to audiobooks and case example, I've done cinematic poetry. One of the book has been translated into film, the marriage of writing now in film. And I think that's an area that maybe you would do, maybe review a film, maybe from a book, because that's a new area, cinematic poetry. Number two, we've talked of maybe the lack that came with self-publishing. And I'm here to say that self-publishing could be either a blessing or a curse, because there are no standards. Sometimes there is no watchdog. I'm a student of Lucas Wafula. I did a course there, Global Editorial Center. And I think we learned a lot. So most writers, anyone can ask you for manuscript. When they publish, someone opens the first page and you are embarrassed. And that has been one of the greatest challenges. We have others that say they want to write yet. I'm from history publishers. They've been asking for people to submit for anthologies, maybe for a group, and people will not submit yet. They want to just start writing from somewhere. So I think these are some of the challenges in this space, and you speaking about maybe these courses, and also not just reviewing the book or those mystery publishers or others that are coming with this will be of great help. Thank you so much.
You know, the thing about self-publishing is that it's a good thing. But Mwende said something, that there is no control. There is no standard. And I was somewhere at one time, a forum like this, and there was one of the authors that I had rejected. And she stood and said that, you know, these traditional publishers, ndio watatujua, you know? They have been saying that we cannot publish, but I published that manuscript that they rejected. It's already out there. And she was saying as she was looking at me, you know? And I said, okay, fine. But the thing about publishing is this. Look, nobody stops you from writing. That is number one. Nobody stops you from publishing. What stops you from publishing a story is yourself. If you write a story, or you write a book, a poetry, a collection, and the quality is poor, nobody is going to publish it. And I'm one of those guys who reject manuscripts, because that is one of the things that I do. I am an editor. And I'm supposed to, I'm not your friend on Facebook. I'm not going to give you a like. And I'll look at you like this, and I'll tell you, this cannot be published. Because that is what, can you imagine, Nyasili, if you went to a doctor, and the doctor will not treat you because they like you. They'll just treat you because you are a patient, right? And that is what we do. That's what we do. I write myself. I've written for, I wrote for Standard for many years, you know? And I had an editor, and he would tell me when my stories are good and when they are bad. And so, for us publishers, we are there to maintain a standard. Why do you like Ngugi? Why do you like Achebe? It's because somebody sat with him and told him, you are supposed to do A, B, C, D. I have worked with Ngugi. Yuki knows that. Ngugi is so serious with editing his work that he would spend so much time on a word. But how many of us do that? I like what Major Mwangi and the other Mwangi has said about the future of Kenyan publishing. It is in your hands. It is totally in your hands. Now, I was the judge of the inaugural Kendeka Prize, Kendeka African Prize for Literature. And when we did the long list, there were only 3 Kenyans out of 15. This year, I have checked the long list. There's only 1 Kenyan. The rest are Nigerians, Zimbabweans, Ugandans, South Africans. So what is happening to Kenya? Yuki, I think one of the reasons for me is that, one, we do not normally have these forums. So nobody talks to you about writing, So we should have more forums so that you can interact with other writers and publishers and come to learn that writing is work. Writing is not the composition you used to write in class 8. Writing is work. Writing is looking at a word as currency. You should value that word the way you value money, the way you would value gold. Writing is work. The other thing that we are supposed to do is to ensure that we attend trainings. Read what Wendy is saying and ask yourself, why is she criticizing this work? And yet you thought that it's so good. Why is she criticizing it? What does she want to come out? I think that is very important. So if there is a forum like this, attend it. If there's a book launch, attend. If there is a training, and I do training, amen? I train people to write and edit and, the whole publishing thing. Attend. It is going to help you a lot. Otherwise, if you just sit somewhere and you are hating people and you're saying, oh, those people are so bad, you're not going to go anywhere. Then also, let us involve ourselves in competitions. You cannot say that you are a good, footballer and yet you just play with your son in your compound. You are a very good swimmer and yet you just swim in your shower. Can you imagine swimming in the shower? And you say, I'm so good. Eh? So you have to put yourself out there, join the other people. There's nobody who is going to publish you just because you are good in your village. When we publish you, you should go to toe with Ngugi, with the champions of this world, with the George Saunders of this world. It's not just about us. It is about the whole big community of writers and publishers out there. And so I'm so happy that we are here. I'm so happy. Because if you're not here, you wouldn't have had this. Now you know.
Myself. It has different thresholds. I think it's also wrong to compare a publisher with a doctor. Because the doctor, if you have a cold, then you have a cold. If you have typhoid, then you have typhoid, and the treatment is the same. But you do not have the same demand, the same niche for writing and reading. Different people want different things, yeah? Different publishers want different things from writers. And I'm using you as an example, so it's not a personal attack. You will probably judge my work according to how you like it. So I think as much as we want for perfection, as much as we want grammar and spellings and everything and the flow to be, palatable, I think it's important to tell writers that, I don't know how you can put it, but the minute a writer comes to you and says, and you tell them rejected, and then you don't say what, because I've been through that. I wasn't told what was wrong with my work, but I was just told rejected, and then I'm sitting there thinking, okay, is it that I can't write? Is it that what is it? So I think you also need to be a little human to the new writers, encourage them, build them, and that is what the self-publishing is trying to do. But because you can't, to go back to your analogy of a doctor, we cannot, you cannot just come from the village and become a doctor. There's training, yeah? And sometimes, the doctor is told, you treat that child who has a wound, a little wound there, until they graduate to treating stuff like cancer. So I think there should be steps. I'm sure there's something else I wanted to say. Yeah. Also, something Mwende said, and I don't think she meant it as a negative thing, but I think also it's the way it came out is that when you say you open the first page and you're embarrassed, and I know all of us have had those very embarrassing moments. I know I've had too many of them where I want to write the word flash with an A, and then I use a U, and then I've gone through that work, and somebody has gone through that work again, but you only see that work when the book is out, and unfortunately it's the first mistake you see. I don't think anyone should really be embarrassed. I think you should remove the word embarrassing, because when you tell a writer, their work embarrassed you, it's really not nice. Some of us have developed thick skin, so there's nothing anybody can say. But people are different, so there's also that, because we are losing a lot of talent and a lot of writers because they're scared. They don't have anyone to encourage them. So over to you. Language, and how you talk to people, and if you reject my work, tell me why you rejected my work, so maybe I can come back and try again.
Sorry, I feel like it's a tricky thing to put that on a writer. We can't on one hand say writing is work, writing is blah, blah, blah. So which is to say you need to build up a certain set of skills, right, to become a passable writer. I don't want to say a great writer, because then that takes us back to the old, what is the great Kenyan novel, what is the Kenyan novel conversation. But then if this is work and you're developing a set of skills, being a great marketer, being a great publicist, being a great etc. are also a set of skills. And I don't know if we all need those skills, because there is sort of a gap. At least I would say there's a gap. Lexa, for instance, plugs some of that gap. But there is a gap between people who are writing and all the other people, like, I want to say the infrastructure that comes with writing. You know what I'm saying? People whose job is working in publicity or marketing, or people whose job is like me, just sitting in their house in front of a camera and being like, hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be interviewing a writer, but we never have a Kenyan writer on our channels and so on. And I think the question for me is, how do we build that infrastructure and not so much focus that work and make it the prerogative of the writer. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
My name is Andre Otieno. I'm an unpublished writer. I've written so much, but still hiding with them, sadly. I'm so happy that we have people like Charles Ofula being here. I think I've seen what he's done. I've been to some of the events where he's speaking. And there's one thing that we need to really address and face it so directly. In 2020, during the COVID, I did a challenge online, calling on my friends to showcase the books that they have on their shelves in a circular manner. And my intention was, I just wanted to see how many Kenyan books were existing in those circles. So what I came, the conclusion from what I saw was that there were so many Nigerian novels, especially fiction. So I asked myself, what are the Nigerians doing so differently from Kenyans that makes them be, read widely, even by Kenyan readers? You editors, do you get to those moments and just throw work away because, of course, you met somewhere where it should be began and your meeting began, or something of that sort?
My point about publishers, and from experience, is I was happy to hear what Mr. Afula said, because he's a publisher who has courage. He reads people's stuff. I know. There's a great majority of publishers who will not read, especially when you're dealing with the subject matter, leave alone punctuation, spelling, whatever, grammar and all that. The subject matter. I think we should look at a way of dealing with the subject matter sort of separately from the grammar, etc., the writing skills. And then we can maybe decide, can we polish up the grammar because this subject matter is important? Because we went through a lot of trouble because of the weight of our subject matter. The publishers just say, no, I'm not willing to deal with it. And I think if we deal with subject matters, we will give writers a lot more courage to talk about the difficult and important things in our society. Thank you.
I'll respond first to what Nyambura said about writers having to be their own marketing agents. So if you're into self-publishing, because maybe you haven't had success with a publisher, you want control, you do have to be your own marketer. And we are in a social media generation where you can't escape that. So that's unavoidable. Now, the plus side of that is when you're selling your books to the Kenyan audience or your audience at large, as a self-published person, you're also selling your character. Pardon my French, no one is going to buy your book if you're an asshole, or if you're rude to society, or you're totally indifferent. So you also have to give yourself a public face and show the character behind your work. To the other two gentlemen, the one who was comparing Kenyan and Nigerian writers, this again goes to what I mentioned earlier, is you have to present a book that solves a problem. If you look at someone like Chimamanda, when she started writing, African feminism was just on the rise, so she came in and she put herself at the forefront of that discussion. So through her writing, she was able to address that issue and solve the problem. If you look at Tomi Adeyemi, the female author behind Children of Blood and Bone series, she was able to create a holistic world for African mythology, which was sorely lacking. That's also part of the inspiration behind one of my books as well. So you have to ask yourself, first and foremost, what problem are you solving as a writer, and your success naturally will come.
I would say the education system, for just to blame it a little bit more, but not to write as if you're guarded, as if someone is watching you, as if you have to be moral, or compared to the values of society. Husbands are not supposed to teach, so husbands, this is why I'm going to punish this man. The wife is like this. Like that whole thinking of the whole, your mother is watching you, your teacher is watching you, the pastor is watching you. There's that, I've encountered that especially with the young upcoming authors, where you read a Nigerian book and like Baba Segi, I think we have all, or most of us have read Baba Segi. It's an immoral book, if you, depending on how you see it, but it's a good story. You enjoy the story, regardless of it not conforming to societal values. So I think that's one thing we need to get over our, whatever it is that we've been taught, or the values we think that society requires of us. I think to show our souls, we need to do that. So that's just one thing I had before I forgot. I'll answer, I think, person by person. Jerusha had asked if I can review films from books. That's okay, it's still art, it's still creative work, so that's, I have no problem with that. Closely tied with that will be, I've come to realize it's a very hard process between the writer, they have a book, and us reading it. You find someone saying, I have a book, you've never heard of them, and then for them, they are thinking maybe their book is not famous, so they're really struggling with that. So there's that gap between books being published and us knowing they exist, even before reading them, just knowing they exist. To give an example of this, I was surprised to learn that Kintu by Nansubuga, had been published in Kenya, way before we ever heard of it. So it stayed in Kenya for 5 years, we never heard about the book, it goes international, and all Kenyans are crazy about that book. It comes, everyone is buying Kintu, everyone is reading Kintu. It was a good story, but it was in our midst here in Nairobi, but we had never heard of it, we had never encountered it. So I think there's that problem of, I think someone called it infrastructure, writing infrastructure. I think we need to maybe find a way of solving it, because as just to pile on publishers, they were not necessarily bridging that gap, which is their role. I think I've noticed that Nigerians have some, I know that to call them communal publishing houses, where you come together, and because as I'm saying, you can't really do away with the work publishing houses do. You just can't. You can't take away that whole process and expect to have quality work. So either way, you can find a way of bridging that gap, which, as I was saying, you can do it as a community. Wafula, who had been the next speaker, raised quality issues from self-publishing. The quality issues, I think, personally, that I'm raising are not even on the subject matter. It's not even about whether your work is mythology or I don't understand what is this. Just to give an example of a book I critiqued on Facebook, the book was by a man writing, I think, of course, about history. His subject matter was very interesting. It's actually a book I really enjoyed. But all the women in that book had weird body shapes. All of them, absolutely all of them. So, and I noticed, I actually pointed it out that you could have given a woman, or just anyone, just to read your book and tell you, the breasts don't balance the hips. Something as simple as that, that the body works a little differently than you imagine. It was that horrible in terms of the women. So those are the kind of mistakes you read, and I'm almost saying it's embarrassing as much as Shiko does not want us to use that word. It becomes, you cringe a little in the, someone could have really pointed that out. So I think those are the kind of issues we are talking about when it comes to quality. It's not particularly, because if you have a story, you have a story. I can't really gatekeep that. But on the other side, there's some things that, you really have to check, or even if you're not the one to check, have someone else take you through that process.
Wow, thank you. Let's clap for Mwende. Yeah, I think I'll pick it from where you've left. About being brave, Remember I said that when you're writing, you should not write the way you used to write the composition. The composition had some parameters that you are supposed to be in this, in some sort of fence. You can't do this, you can't write this way, you can't do this, you cannot use this way. You cannot break the rules of grammar, for example. Now, if you've read Betrayal in the City, then you know that there's a particular character that breaks all the rules of grammar, and yet you enjoy when he speaks. It is not composition. At the same time, if you've read The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives, then you know that it's a very interesting book. And your mother may have read it, and they may never want you to know that they read it. And I also wanted to add on what my colleagues have said about Nigerians. Forget about Nigerians. I've read some Nigerians that are terrible. I'm telling you, they are so bad. Kenyans are better. Who is telling you that they are better than us? It's just that you are shying away from beating them. They are very good in their own way, but we're also good in our own way. It's just that we are running away from ourselves. You see, you can never be Njuki. If you try to be Njuki, then you'll just be an imitation of Njuki. And that is what we do. Most writers will pick Chinua Achebe. Wow, it is wonderful. The way Amalinze the cat is being thrown by Okonkwo, and you want to have the drums beating in your own village, and you want to reproduce that in a different way, then you just bring it to me and say, I brought you the best manuscript this year. You are an imitation. You are not yourself. And that is the difference between us and Nigerians. When Chimamanda talks about Nzuka, and she just talks about the university and the strikes, don't we have our own University of Nairobi here? Don't we see these strikes that are here? We just had an election. Didn't we see what was happening? Why should we go back to a man of the people? Why should we copy? We will only be imitations. So let's move away from that and stop glorifying Nigerians. Let us appreciate them, learn from them, and make ourselves better. Then you as a writer, and I agree with Njuki, should be your best marketer. There's a way a mother will introduce you. And have you met my daughter who is at the University of Nairobi? But be a thief and see if at all anyone is. Have you met my son who is a thief? Is there anyone who is going to say that? There's nobody who is going to say that. So when you read, I'm telling you, as somebody who has experienced writing, somebody who loves writing, and somebody who knows how writers react. When they hold this book, I'm telling you, it's like a baby. That's why we normally say it's a baby. Writers treat this book like their baby. Say, have you seen my book? One of the ways of marketing is to get to Mwende. Can you review my book? I think I've done a good job. And, if you see anything that I need to improve, then you can let me know. So the writer should be a marketer of their own work. And if you've done a good job, I'm telling you, you will be the first person to say, this is a good book. For instance, we did a book with Jerusha, Marry Me a Co-Wife, and other poems. Otieno was talking about the title, that, Nigerians will write something like fresh water and you'll just go ahead and buy it. The title is very important, and that is where the editor comes in. And your friends who are serious with writing. Now, most of our friends, like if I had something, now I know Mwende, I know Mtendei, I know Njuki. If I write something on Facebook, it will be like. But there is one who will come and say, Lucas, really? This is what you could do? I think you can improve. This is something that you can do in a better way. So you have to know the kind of people that you are dealing with. Are they just your praise singers, or are they people who can give you proper feedback so that you can improve? So we can pick a book that you've done, we can look at what you've done, we can look at the quality of your work, and we will tell you how we can improve. We are not here to crucify anyone, we are here to improve someone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will not even attempt to summarize what they have said, but I just want to point us the way ahead. At 4:30, we shall have a presentation, a short one from this center here, Lyons. They'll come and tell us what you do, and then there will be the poetry. I think the poets who are here, and we can see them, the spoken word artists, and who are here. And then, but after Lyons speaks, there will be writers here who have got already books. They will show us the books they have.